Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you again from Orange County, California. This is the site, the blog, the vlog, the podcast that you access in order to be able to learn more, to discuss more as a community about travel, to travel more, hopefully, and to enjoy your life more. You can reach me on a variety of different social media platforms. Of course, you can reach me at theprofessortravel.com. Through YouTube and Facebook, you can reach me also there at The Professor Travel. On Instagram, it's a little bit different. It's the_professor_travel. On Twitter, you can reach me at theprofessortr1. And then if you're a blogger, you can always reach me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am very excited to have a returning visiting professor come again. This is, again, Professor Morissa Pawl-Frederico. Hi, Morissa. How are you today?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming back. We love to hear your stories of your travel.
My pleasure.
Now, last time we talked about Iceland, but this time we're going to talk a little bit about another destination that you went to, Argentina. So before we get into that, just again to refresh some of my students, can you talk a little bit about your credentials, like some of your educational credentials, and just a couple of places that you've gone?
Yeah, you bet. Educational credentials. I have a master's in international business, global management. I'm all but dissertation on 2 different doctorates, so that's a whole other story. And I teach international business, but I'm also a photographer, and I've really traveled around the world. Of course, there are a lot of places I haven't been. The only continent I haven't been to is Antarctica, which I was very close to this time, and that is on my list for probably January of 2021.
Nice. I actually saw the photo of the penguin, but we'll get into that in just a little bit too. Now, this specific trip you decided to go to Argentina, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. And is the correct pronunciation actually Argentina or is it Argentina? I mean, like I hear a lot of people in many different ways.
Either way, Argentina or Argentina, depending on, if you're speaking Spanish, it's Argentina, but English, Argentina, it's not a problem.
Okay, fantastic. And how long in advance did you decide to start making plans for this trip?
Well, this one was kind of an interesting one because I have a very good friend that is, he's actually a flight attendant for American Airlines, and he lived in Argentina for many years. So the original plan was to meet up with him in Argentina, and we started, looking into this about, I'm going to say June or July. It was roughly around June, I guess. So, several months before. And then he, due to health reasons, had to drop out. And so just my partner and I went. And we decided, we were already planning on going. Let's do it. So,
Well, it's still, I mean, again, that's kind of like short notice, I would think, in terms of planning, but you tend to, you know your way around travel. You've been doing it for many, many years, ever since I've known you, and I've known you for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I don't think you have a problem with, if you had to start making reservations for like a flight tomorrow to the middle of nowhere, you would be able to do it without any major problems at all.
Well, funny you should say that because, that's exactly what I did. On Thursday, I decided I wanted to go to Cambodia on Monday. So I literally, Thursday afternoon, I thought, it's coming to the end of the year. I need to make sure I keep my mileage status on the airline. Where can I go? And this Monday, I'm leaving for Cambodia. So
Oh my gosh.
But I was, over 25 years in the travel industry. So.
And that's fantastic. I love hearing about all your various different travel stories because you give a unique flavor in that you've gone to so many different places. You've done a lot of different things. You've done things both rurally and urbanly. So it's been a really interesting opportunity to hear those stories with you and just kind of live through you vicariously as we go through that process. It's been fun. I really enjoy it a lot.
Great. I'm glad. I love traveling pretty much to anywhere. Urban, rural, doesn't matter.
Awesome. And just as a pre-show hook, I would say, can I reach out to you again in order to touch base with you on Cambodia once you come back from there?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
By all means.
Thank you so much.
It should be an interesting trip. So,
Well, I'm sure it'll be a very educational one as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in preparation for going to Argentina, did you need to have a special visa or travel medications, anything like that?
You do need a yellow fever shot. I had my shot already. They last for 2 years if you do a shot. You can do a 5-year session or 5-year length of medication if you do an oral yellow fever vaccination. Um, but I had already had one from going to Vietnam last year.
Okay.
So I did not need to get a booster. My spouse did need to get a booster because it had been longer, but that was pretty much it. I recommend hepatitis A vaccination for everyone.
Okay.
Just, it doesn't matter where you're going, because just get that vaccination, and it's 2 shots over a course of, I think a year, and then you're good. You're protected for life. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Very good. All right. So let's start to talk about then this vacation. Let's talk about the pre-packing process. You're going over to Argentina. It can be a hot climate. It can be a cold climate. I mean, what do you pack for something like that?
Well, that's the interesting thing, Scott, because Argentina, I think people don't realize just how big Argentina is. If the world map wasn't created by the Europeans and we saw, other continents in their real shapes, you would see just how vast Argentina is. So we were in Buenos Aires. I've been to Iguazu before, way up in the north. We didn't do that this time, but Buenos Aires was, spring season, so it was getting warm. It ended up getting quite warm for a couple of days. And then we went all the way down south to Tierra del Fuego, which was on the chilly side. So yeah, you had to kind of pack for both, which, it just makes your luggage thicker, heavier. So because you have to take both into account.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how many days did you actually end up for this specific trip?
This was, I think, about 16 days.
16 days. Okay. And during the packing process, are you playing around with the idea of bringing toiletries with you, or are you going to purchase them when you get there? I'm just kind of curious.
I'll tell you, most of the time, I purchase things like shampoo and conditioner when I get someplace. I don't want to have to deal with bringing it. It just depends. It depends on where you're going, when you're going. But yeah, this particular trip, we just bought that stuff there.
Okay.
As far as, other toiletries, I just keep a small, toothpaste in my travel bag at all times. So that's there. If you need more, you can always buy it. So.
Yeah. I think it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of gauge how much luggage you want to bring with you. When you travel, I imagine you pretty much can fit everything into a backpack and then boom, you're off. But when you're dealing with 16 days, that's a whole nother ball game at that point.
It is, especially if you're dealing with multiple climates, because you're gonna need, lots of shorts, but then you're also gonna need jeans, and you're gonna need, some maybe tennis shoes, and then some hiking boots. So yeah, it can get, it doesn't seem like a lot, but once you start packing, it adds up.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm assuming from this location, for this specific trip, you left out of Portland International Airport. Is that correct?
Yes, left out of Portland.
Okay. And how did you get there?
American Airlines, Portland to Dallas, and then Dallas down to Buenos Aires.
Okay.
On the return, it connected through Los Angeles.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I should have been more specific on that. In order to get to the airport, did you use like an Uber, a Lyft? Did you get a shuttle, or did you just park there the entire time?
No, because it was 16 days. We took the train there.
Oh, okay.
The public transport. It puts you right there, and we talked about this on the last session. It takes you right to the terminal, drops you off. It's so easy. I will admit, on the way home, however, we were too tired and too lazy, so we did take an Uber home.
That's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So your flights, you had a stopover in Dallas, I think you said,
Stopover in Dallas.
and then down to Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
Did you have any downtime in Dallas, in like a pre-vacation destination where you stopped there for a day, or did you just do a quick layover?
Quick layover. In fact, it was maybe about an hour before we were off again. It was a very good connection.
So speaking of travel times, what is the timeline as far as from Portland all the way down to Buenos Aires?
It's about 16 hours.
16 hours?
Yeah.
So about from Los Angeles to Australia, in effect.
Basically, yeah, because it's about 12 hours, from 12 to 13 hours, Dallas to Buenos Aires,
Okay.
and then you add on the Portland to Dallas portion, and it adds up to, it's about 16.
Were you on coach, business, or first class?
Unfortunately, coach.
You know what? At least you're being able to get there, and so I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the difference in which you look at it. So
We did upgrade ourselves to what's called main cabin extra
okay.
on American Airlines. So we had extra leg room and free drinks and things like that.
Oh, that's kind of nice though, at least.
Yeah.
Now, when you got down there, did you have any pre-vacation destinations that had already been paid for through a third-party service? I know you, having been part of the travel industry previously, you kind of know how to book your own stuff, but I wasn't sure if you used like a separate like agency in order to book like excursions or anything like that.
Well, actually, one excursion was booked through an agency.
Okay.
That was to go see the penguins on Martillo Island down in Tierra del Fuego. And the reason is because only this one company, Pirator, has the license to land on that island and let you walk with the penguins.
Oh, wow.
So that was the only one that we had to go through a tour company to do.
Okay, perfect. So what kind of accommodations are you looking at in Buenos Aires?
We did Airbnb, although it really was my friend that's a flight attendant. Since he lived there, these are friends of his that own an Airbnb, so they just blocked it out for us, and
Oh,
we paid
wow.
them directly. Yeah, but it was fantastic. It was up on the 14th floor with a gorgeous view, just right in the center of San Telmo, which is it's the older area. It's very trendy. It's it's walking distance. There's a metro station. It's called the Sube.
So,
The Sube. Yeah, it's right outside their door. It was so convenient. Perfect location.
now, I'm a foodie. So for me, I'm always curious when you're going down there, because I mean, Brazilian and Peruvian are very, very different. What kind of food do they have in Argentina?
Oh, yeah, the best. I don't know what else to say. It's very meat centric. If you're a vegetarian, why go? I'm kidding. There are vegetarian options, but it's a meat producing country.
Okay.
So our favorite dish, well, two empanadas, of course.
Oh,
Everybody knows
yeah.
empanadas. In fact, we went on a quest for the best empanada, and then also milanesa, which we're very fond of. Milanesa is a very thin meat, a steak. You can get chicken as well, but steak, and then it's breaded and fried, and it's not greasy, but it's it's usually served with chips or French fries, or vegetables or whatever, and it's just incredible. I mean, the meat's incredible. So
It sounds very Peruvian. In fact, one of my favorite dishes in Peruvian is like a verde campoya, which is basically like a chicken steak that's breaded, very similar.
very similar.
And instead of putting it on fries, they put it on like a pasta, like a pesto.
Ah.
So I mean, it's kind of a same concept, but I mean, I am assuming that if you like Peruvian food, you'll probably like Argentinian food as well.
I don't know of anybody that doesn't like Argentinian food.
Well,
I mean,
and then there's the wines, of course, too.
Malbec. I mean, yeah, you can drown in the wines. It just, $4 bottle of wine, and it's just so
Are you
good.
serious?
Well, here's the thing. Now, their economy crashed in August,
Uh-huh.
so we were able to take advantage of that, and everything was dirt cheap. It was incredible. The wines were $5, $4 or $5 a bottle for a nice wine. Meals. The most expensive meal that we spent the whole time was down in Tierra del Fuego in Ushuaia, where we had a live king crab. The crab, you saw the picture, the crab itself was the size of a cow, or the size, I should say, of a cow's head. It was massive, and with drinks, it was $60 for two people.
That's insane.
Yeah, and that was outrageously expensive. That's something that people don't normally spend.
Can we take a step back for just a second? I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious. When earlier you talked about looking at it from the European globe size, how, if we were looking at it from a United States size perspective, how large would you say that Argentina is?
You know, I don't know the actual square miles offhand, but it's much larger than it looks like on the globe or on a map, because when maps were created from the European perspective, they kind of shrunk everything, other than Europe. But if it was normal size, it would be, I'm gonna say probably, well, it's as big as Brazil, um, much wider than it looks like on the map, and I'm gonna say at least probably, top to bottom, it's about the size of the United States.
That's massive.
It
That's
is. It
huge.
is pretty big.
It's very deceptive because when you're looking at some of the countries in South America, you don't tend to think how huge they are, except for possibly Brazil, because just
Right.
Brazil is massive on its own. But when you're thinking in terms of either Peru or the size of Chile, which is also
Hmm.
very tall and probably could go all the way up and down the entire United States and Canadian coastline,
Right.
when you're thinking about something like that, you're like, wow, I hadn't really thought about the size, but when you put it into perspective, it really does make quite a difference. So
Yeah, like if you took Argentina and you laid it on its side, it would be as long or as wide as the United States is across.
yeah, that's crazy. That's huge. Okay, so let's talk about your itinerary. Okay, how long are you going to be in Buenos Aires there?
We spent a little over a week in Buenos Aires because you can use Buenos Aires as a jumping off point for a lot of different things. For example, we went to Uruguay for the day.
Oh, nice.
It's a wonderful trip. It's an hour and a half, I think, by boat. Oh, not even, maybe just an hour by boat. You take the ferry across right from Buenos Aires. You land in Colonia del Sacramento, and you can go further afield. You can go down to Montevideo or wherever you want. But we just went for the day. Spent the day, rented a golf cart, drove around, had a blast, and then took a late boat home back to Buenos Aires.
That's awesome. I didn't, I had totally forgotten that you had gone to Uruguay as well, and
Yeah.
that's just again when I release this to the vlog and the podcast, I'll also highlight that as well too, because I think that's a great a side note, because these countries are so close to each other on the border sides that it does make it very easy and convenient for you to be able to do that. Let me ask you really quickly before we get back into Argentina about Uruguay.
Mhm.
What if you were going to sell it in a way to someone who wanted to visit Uruguay? What would you say is a selling point of going there?
Oh, it's lovely. The people are so lovely. The sites. It's not as overrun, I would say, with tourism, because it's a much smaller country, and also because it's a much smaller country, they don't have the economic woes that a country the size of Argentina does.
Mm.
So, there's a little bit of that. Things are a little bit more expensive, but it's still very reasonable. And they just don't have anything but kindness for people. And I will say Argentina is the same way, but especially in Uruguay, it was really a lovely day. And granted, we only spent the day there, but it's very nice.
I had
Worth
heard,
doing.
I had heard a couple of different things about Uruguay, which kind of piqued my attention previously. I thought one of them, and please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, if you don't mind.
No,
I had heard that they use the U.S. dollar. Is that true?
quite a bit. They do.
Okay, so they use the U.S. dollar. I've also heard that Uruguay is also very LGBT friendly as well.
Oh, but Buenos Aires, I mean, Argentina is, Uruguay is, absolutely. Both.
Okay,
Very much so.
awesome. Well, those really, I think, accentuate. If you're looking for a place where, say, for example, you and your partner, like with me and my husband, we considered going down there as well, and that's one of the selling points that I've looked at is, where could I go that's not only safe, but would be a very nice location and a different culture that we can explore and really get a lot out of. And I think if that's one of those things that would be helpful to the specific community that I represent, above and
Hmm.
beyond not just the travel community but also the LGBT community. I think that's
Right.
something that's definitely worthy of consideration if you're doing
Oh
that.
yeah, but both of those countries are completely accepting, no problems. Nobody. I mean, you'll see straight men walking arm in arm. You'll see gay men walking arm in arm. Women, and nobody cares. Which is really fascinating for a primarily Catholic country. Both of them. It's just a non-issue.
Yeah, and I think from a sociological perspective, and you and I are both professors,
Hmm.
we look at countries like that, and the nature of how that is socially acceptable there, but in other societies it's not, and I
Yeah.
think part of that resonates because of the differences in the political climates, the socioeconomic climates. I mean, there's so many different factors to take into consideration. The history, you know.
There are a lot of factors, and nothing I can put my finger on that really explains it. But yeah, there are a lot of factors to why it is the way it is. But there are large gay communities in both countries.
Excellent. Okay, so let's step out of Uruguay for a minute and go back to
Mhm.
Argentina, and specifically to Buenos Aires. You did a few things there. Do you want to highlight a couple of those different things that you did?
Yeah, we went to the first of all the Mercado San Telmo, which was not very far from us. It's just an old market, kind of a cool place to go. But on Sundays, every Sunday they have the Feria San Telmo, which is it's like a street market, and it goes for miles. Artisans, all sorts of things. And one of the things I found really particularly attractive about their markets, their street fairs, is the fact that in a lot of countries, if you look at something, they'll push you to buy, and if you don't buy, they get a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Not there.
Oh,
This is the price. You don't need to haggle. This is the price. Would you like it? No, thank you. Well, have a lovely day. And this is especially a country where their economy is not doing well, and the people were just friendly, and nobody was pushy, and it's just a pleasant atmosphere. So yeah, the Feria San Telmo is on a Sunday, not to be missed. Great, just a great time. Tango dancers and
hmm.
all sorts of things, street performers. And then it ends at the Casa Rosada. So if you start at the beginning and just make your way down, you end right at the Plaza de Mayo and the Casa Rosada. Uh,
Now, one of the pictures I'm going to show later on that you took was of is it a plaque, or maybe it's the site where Eva Perón is located at?
it's at her gravesite.
Yeah.
It's at her tomb. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure that's a very important monument to a lot of the people who are native Argentinian or native Argentina, and her presence as part of their society was really paramount, as is highlighted by the shows and movie Evita, and just she had a significant influence on their society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's still revered today. I mean, they have likenesses of her on the sides of tall buildings. She's very prominent in, a lot of things. There's an Evita Peron Park or Eva Peron Park. So yeah, still a very important figure.
Nice. Okay, cool. So now we're going to start to move on. So you had a wonderful week in Buenos Aires.
Mhm.
Now, Tierra del Fuego. Okay.
Well, before we,
Oh,
if you don't mind, before we get to Tierra del Fuego, some of the other things you can do from Buenos Aires, and I highly recommend taking a day tour out to an estancia, and that actually we used a small tour company as well.
you said
Um,
Anastasia?
Estancia. An estancia is really like a ranch.
Okay.
The original ranches where the gauchos they're working gauchos. There are some that are touristy, but there are some that are real, and that's where we went.
Hmm.
The cowboy town is San Antonio de Areco, which you go to prior to an estancia, and you can ride horses, you can ride a horse cart. They do performances for you with the horses, and they of course feed you a massive asado, a barbecue. So it's definitely I would say a not to be missed experience. And then there's also there are a lot of other things you can do for the day within Buenos Aires, different types of things. So we in spending a little over a week, we had plenty to do. There was a lot.
Wonderful. And so you wrap up your week there. What kind of a flight did you take down to Tierra del Fuego?
We took LATAM Airlines down to Tierra del Fuego from Buenos Aires. Very simple to do. You don't go from the international airport, you go from the city airport,
Okay.
Which is the domestic airport. 3-hour flight down to Tierra del Fuego and a world away. It's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're going from a almost tropical climate to a much colder climate at that point.
Antarctic, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all the same country. It's just, it's the difference between like Texas and Alaska. So
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about Tierra del Fuego. What should we know about there?
Tierra del Fuego is really charming. I will say a couple of things. I would advise renting a car in advance for at least one day,
Okay.
so that you can drive yourself down to the actual Fin del Mundo, which is the end of the world, within the Tierra del Fuego Park. Don't waste your time taking the train, the Fin del Mundo train. It's a touristy little train, and yeah, it's interesting, but you'll be much better off and have a better time if you just book ahead. We got lucky at the last minute, but book ahead, and you can get an inexpensive car for $25 a day, and drive yourself down to the Tierra del Fuego Park, the national park, where you can hit different spots.
You had a picture, and it's not what I'm highlighting here in the background PowerPoint, but people can obviously go to your site in order to see that, and I'll have the link up in just a little bit. But you had an interesting picture of destinations from the location that you were at. Can you tell me a little bit about that picture and that signage that they had there?
Yeah, it's really it's fun. It's called the post office at the end of the world, and it's the southernmost post office in the world. The town, or the city, it's more of a town. The town of Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world. It's that, and then Antarctica. So, I mean, with the exception of Port Williams in Chile, but that's not really a town, and it's not set up for tourists or anything. So there's this sign down there. Well, first of all, when you get down there to that post office, for a couple of dollars, they'll stamp your passport and put a sticker in it and everything that says, "You've been to the end of the world," which of course I had to do,
Of course.
Yeah, my spouse just looked at me and, the eyes went rolling, but, I'm corny like that. So
enjoy it. It's fantastic.
yeah, I enjoy it. I've been here. So then they have that sign, and it shows the distance of all these different places from the end of the world. The end of the civilized world. So I just thought it was kind of fun to see how far away everything was.
It's a great picture. I loved it. I highly recommend everybody go over to your website in order to see the variety of different photographs that you have, because some are quirky, some are really picturesque and beautiful, and you have a great eye for photography. I understand why you got into it now, so it's amazing. So you were down in Tierra del Fuego for how long? Is it basically a week?
No, I want to say 4 days.
4 days, okay.
About 4 days. 4 or 5 days, something like that, yeah.
And how's the weather down there during that time?
Well, it's spring, so there were
So cold.
we were lucky. The weather was absolutely beautiful. A coat, yeah, but I was wearing a t-shirt.
Okay.
You could get away with that. It's known as being very windy. It's also very cold. But for me, coming from Portland, it was pleasant. It was like 50 degrees, which was fantastic. After we left, the winds picked up again. It's known for its winds, but while we were there, it was calm. So again, we just got very lucky, but it can be very, very cold, especially with wind chill.
Excellent. And did you notice a difference in, again, we're going to get back into food because I'm totally a foodie, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice a difference in the cuisine, primarily between what you had in Buenos Aires and Tierra del Fuego?
Yes, in fact, seafood plays a big role because it's, it's at the water where the Atlantic and the Pacific come together.
Mhm.
So king crab is king, so as I mentioned at the beginning. But the other thing that you find more there, you will get beef, but the thing you find more there is lamb, because
Understood.
the ranches there are sheep ranches. They're not cattle ranches.
So it's almost like
So
going to Norway in reverse.
absolutely, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what were some of the activities that you did while you were down there?
Sorry. Well, we took the boat to Martillo Island
Mm.
and saw the Gentoo penguins and the Magellanic. Always have trouble with that word. Magellanic penguins. Incredible experience walking with the penguins. Only one company does that. It's called Tour. They
Mhm.
have the exclusive license to do to. I mean, there are lots of companies that will take you the boat up to it, and you can take pictures from the boat.
Yeah.
But Tour has the license to take people onto the island,
Mm.
and they only do it, 20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon, and 10 people at a time are spend time with the penguins just to preserve it. And you can't get that close. I mean, you're very close. You're like 5 feet away,
But you can't
but
touch
not
them.
intrusive. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not intrusive.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome.
So that was definitely a highlight.
Nice.
And then the other day we drove down to Tierra del Fuego, and one of the days we just kind of kicked it around town, walking around town and just relaxing and seeing a cute little town.
What type of like if somebody wanted to buy souvenirs or something to bring back from Tierra del Fuego, what I mean, I imagine they probably would have a lot of wool and things like that that were
They
down
do.
there. But
They
what
do.
other things might they have too?
A stuffed penguin.
Of
Just,
course,
of course.
of course,
Um,
they have stuffed penguins.
yeah, stuffed penguins. It's really, there's not a lot. I would say, t-shirts, wool scarves, things like that are very, very big. Mate cups, you can get that all over Argentina. And then, of course, stuffed penguins, because, everybody needs a stuffed penguin.
Now, when you're down in that area, I imagine because of the coldness of the climate, wine is not necessarily the first drink of choice down there. What kind of hot drinks do they have that are the preferred drinks in that area?
Wine's still the first choice of drink.
Of
It's Argentina.
course.
And beer too. Beer is big in Argentina.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of breweries, a lot of microbreweries in Argentina.
I don't typically think to go to gravitate towards beer when I'm thinking about Argentina. The wines, absolutely, they're world
Yeah.
renowned for their wines. But you're saying that the brewery groupings down there are actually pretty good too.
The brewery culture has exploded in Argentina. Absolutely. Every little province has a couple of different microbrews.
Okay.
So that was fun too. But as far as hot drinks, coffee. It's just coffee, tea. They're big on mate.
Mate.
They drink mate all day, every day. Doesn't matter what the weather is. It could be hot and humid. It could be cold. That is just the national drink.
And
Uh,
and again, for the benefit of my students who aren't familiar with what mate is,
it's like an herbal tea.
okay.
I don't particularly care for it. It's an acquired taste. To me, it tastes a little bit like dirt. But there are people. Obviously, Argentinians grow up with it, so they have an acquired taste for it. But yeah, it's just an herbal tea.
It's just very earthy.
Very earthy.
You're like really, really earthy.
Really earthy.
All right, fantastic. Any other things we want to touch on at Tierra del Fuego before we head on back?
No, Tierra del Fuego is going to be a little bit more expensive, even accommodation, because there's limited accommodation. We did an Airbnb there as well. Limited accommodation, limited everything because things have to be flown in. Tierra del Fuego started as a penal colony, much like Australia. It's where Argentina sent their prisoners, and that's how the town of Ushuaia got really started. So
Okay.
you have to bear in mind that it is going to be a little bit more expensive.
Makes sense. And speaking of that as well, if a person wanted to take an excursion or a few-day excursion, like a cruise, to head into the Arctic Circle, would Tierra del Fuego be the place that they would want to do that from, or are there other spots that are more appropriate for that?
Thanks for asking. Yes, it is. The town of Ushuaia is also the jumping off point to Antarctica. And even though Antarctica, it's the southernmost city in the world, Antarctica is still another 1,000 kilometers away.
Hmm.
But yes, that is where, I mean, there are boats that go from Chile as well, but that is where most cruises and what have you go from. The cruises, although they only touch the Antarctic Peninsula, they can't go into Antarctica. You have to go with more of an icebreaker ship, a double-hulled ship like Cork Expeditions or National Geographic, or there's a Russian one that's been doing it for many years, that can withstand the ice.
Yeah.
When you're in Ushuaia, you can book last-minute trips and at a discount, if you want to take that chance. The minimum time you have to have, however, is 10 days. It takes that long to get down there, be in the Antarctic, and get back.
And some people might wonder why it takes so long. I mean, 1,000 miles is still 1,000 miles, but there are cruise ships that do go that. I think probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, the notion for wanting to take it slow and steady is because you're running against glaciers, and you have to be very, very cautious about, not necessarily glaciers, but icebergs at least, and you're having to barrel through that in order to be able to get there. Because in the night, those glaciers can, or not glaciers, I keep saying glaciers.
Icebergs.
Well, icebergs. The icebergs can come together and like cover your path, so you have to be very cautious about being able to go in a specific direction and navigate that effectively, and that's why it's very slow, very steady, very meaningful as you go through that process. So
absolutely, but and I really wouldn't recommend anybody do a cruise unless they're already doing a cruise, because you're going all the way down there. You're just touching the tip of Antarctica and turning around and coming back or going on to somewhere else. So if your goal is to see Antarctica, you definitely want to go on an expedition that goes further in.
Okay, perfect. And I know I think there are other places in the world that will go there as well. I think maybe there might be something from South Africa, and I think there might be something from Tasmania over
New Zealand. There is something from New Zealand, but Argentina and then part of Chile too. But again, Chile, they don't have the infrastructure because it's mostly ice down there for Chile. The Argentina and Ushuaia are much closer, so most things go out of Argentina.
Are you saying it was very chilly in Chile?
It's chilly in Chile.
It's chilly in Chile. All right. Enough of the horrible puns. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the de-embarkation process and the return back to the States. So again, was that going to be on American Airlines on return?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we went back to
I'm sorry, back to Buenos Aires first.
Buenos Aires for one day on LATAM, and then American Airlines back to the United States.
Okay. And was that did you do anything that one day, or is it just kind of a getting reacclimated kind of thing?
No, because we had a one night and then we had all day, and it was a night flight back. So we did something really interesting. We did kind of our own self-styled tour of Jewish Buenos Aires.
Oh, tell us a little bit more about that. That's kind of interesting.
It is really interesting because I had never even realized. I mean, I have some distant relatives that were from Buenos Aires, but it's still today the seventh largest Jewish community in the world. Mm-hmm. So who knew? And some beautiful temples and synagogues, and we tried to go to a Jewish restaurant, but they were just randomly closed. The people wanted to go on vacation for a long weekend. We don't know. So we did that, and that was really very interesting. And then one of the highlights of the trip also, which is something I found out kind of last minute and by accident, was going back to the Plaza de Mayo by the Casa Rosada. And it's really moving. There's something called, it's the mothers of the plaza, Las Madres de la Plaza. They're a group of women who are very elderly at this point, who have been marching every single Thursday since 1977 around the obelisk in the plaza. really, originally it was a protest for after the military coup in the mid 70s, when 30,000 people went missing. So these are the mothers of some of these children, and it became a thing. And they've continued to march. Around 2009, I think it was 2006 or 2009, they actually were told where some of the bodies were buried, but these women still continue to march, and they're really a national treasure. So that was fascinating. That was absolutely amazing.
And thank you for sharing that with us. It's something I would definitely want to see if I went down there.
Yeah.
I do want to flip really quick back to the Jewish area, though, for just one quick second.
Sure.
And on a rather quirky and factual note, it turns out that this is one of the few places that you can actually get McDonald's kosher. Is that what I'm understanding?
It is. Yes, I did go there. We went there just because we had to. Well, we didn't eat anything, but I did take pictures. It's the only kosher McDonald's outside of Israel.
How interesting is that, too? So, I mean, again, you got a lot of things on the high end. You got a lot of things on the really interesting, quirky end.
Yeah.
It sounds like this trip pretty much had everything you could possibly want for all different occasions.
Absolutely. It was, we really did a lot. We packed a lot in. Well,
all right.
And I say that, but I don't mean that packing a lot in. Like some people, I know people that like to just jump from city to city and see everything in a country. We're more the immersive kind of traveler, where we'll have like maybe 2 bases in a 2-week period, and we'll see a lot, but we're immersing ourselves in the culture.
Excellent. Fantastic. All right, so you're heading back now on American Airlines.
Mm-hmm.
How's the return process? Was there any problems with, as far as passport control or anything coming back into the States at all?
Well, it is LAX. I mean,
Yeah.
no. My wife has the quick thing. I can't think of what it's called. That gets you through passport control really quick.
Like
I don't
passport?
have that. Yeah, it's a card.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it is offhand. I have the travel passport, and it's an app on the phone that you can buy for $14.99. Highly recommend it. It helps you to avoid standing in long lines. There's a special line for people with this travel passport. You have your passport and all of your information filled out ahead of time, and as the plane lands, you just click a button and say, yep, I'm here, I'm in LAX or whatever airport that you're going to, as long as it's a member airport. And there's no filling out of cards anymore. There's nothing. You get in a much shorter line. You get there, you scan your phone, and you're done.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like one of the two. Most of the people I'm speaking to through these interviews usually either will gravitate towards the mobile passport or they go through global entry, one of the two.
That's it, global entry. Yeah, and they're both good programs. The thing with global entry is you have to take the time to do an interview, and I already have TSA pre-check.
Yeah.
So I didn't see the necessary value in it, especially now with the mobile passport.
Makes sense. Perfect. Okay, and just so people can get a little bit of a vision as to what you got an opportunity to see, I have a few pictures here if you want to share a couple of them with us.
Sure. The one on the left was Eva Perón's mausoleum in the Recoleta Cemetery, which is an entirely it's something that you can't miss. It's just an incredible cemetery. And not like a ghost hunter or anything. It's just an incredible cemetery.
It's beautiful. It looks beautiful.
It is. It's absolutely stunning. And so that's where Eva Perón is buried. Very interesting there. And I'm sure I heard somebody playing the Requiem from Evita. I don't know where it was coming from, but I heard it. Mm-hmm. So it was very strange, but that was kind of cool. The picture with that's actually a sunrise, believe it or not. That picture, the top right, that was from the 14th floor, the Airbnb we were staying at.
That's beautiful.
And it's facing towards the ocean, or actually it's not the ocean, but it's a fresh body of fresh water, but it's facing out there, and that was just an incredible. We were getting these sunrises every morning. And then the bottom picture is just the Andes from the aircraft as we were coming into Buenos Aires. It just, I love taking photographs from airplanes as well. So,
Well, this is one of those things that's very spectacular because you get a chance to see one of the largest mountain ranges in the world, and it's just a beautiful depiction of exactly what you're looking at as you go through this. The reason that these two pictures, the one on the top and the one on the bottom, I mean, obviously Eva Perón's is fantastic as well, but the one on the top and the one on the bottom show, I think, the dichotomy between the two locations that you were at. One very sunny, very warm environment, almost like Brazil, tropical Mexico type situation, and then the other one very colder, like almost Alaska or Norway or something like that. But it's all the same country, and it's really fascinating that you get those two very, very dramatically different climates.
and not only that, but when you're flying over and you're seeing the Andes, it's so vast and unpopulated.
Mhm.
So I mean, it really makes you almost feel so small when you start to think about how crowded the world is, and then you see vast areas of the planet like this that are uninhabited. It's mind-boggling.
Absolutely. Now, I know if people want to see a few more of your pictures, we have a site. I'm going to show them in just a minute. So I thank you very much for sharing that with us. It's really appreciated. So on post-vacation talk here, let's talk about the pros of going to a place like Argentina.
Um, you know, it's culturally and sites. There's so much to see, so much to experience. The people are absolutely lovely. We did not run across one nasty person, even on the Sube, the metro. We would get on the metro and young people would stand up automatically to give us their seats.
Oh.
Yeah, it just, of course it made me feel old, but that's another story. But yeah, it's a wonderful place to go. The food is incredible. The atmosphere is incredible. There's so much to see. Highly recommend it.
Excellent. And just as some things to be aware of, what might my students want to know about if this is their first time heading over to Argentina?
A couple things, actually. One is, while there's not a lot of general crime, the kind of crime that there is would be like snatch and grab or pickpocketing.
Okay.
So you don't want to wear you don't want to wear a backpack on your back, for example. You want to maybe, when you're in a crowd, put it on the front. Keep a close eye on your things at all times. Beware of anybody, maybe coming by on a motorcycle. Wasn't that common, but it happens. So it's just being aware of your surroundings. It's not dangerous. You can walk at night. It's not a problem, but it's just being cautious of your surroundings and not walking in certain neighborhoods at night. You want to be careful about that. The other thing I would say that you need to be aware of is that you shouldn't use the ATMs. They limit, because the economy is what it is, they limit you to, I think, about $200 or less pulling out of the ATM, and there's a hefty fee that they charge. So you're better off, changing with somebody, or, there are a lot of people that are willing to change money for you, especially if you're staying at a hotel or an Airbnb. Our host, again, friend of a friend, but he was more than happy to change money for us. And if we had money left over at the end, he'd change it back, So there are other ways around it. Credit cards are not as widely accepted as one would think, although most restaurants and tours and things like that do take credit cards.
Okay. That was gonna be my other question because I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious. I'm mostly a plastic person. I don't carry a lot of cash on me, if ever. So I mean, it's good to know that some of those things. And I try to do prepaid excursions in advance, so I'll have maybe a paper voucher or something on my phone if I'm going places. So it's good to know that. So,
one thing I actually want to add, because in all the tour books and people we knew warned us, take taxis, don't use Uber, et cetera, et cetera. We used Uber the whole time in Buenos Aires. It was fantastic. Literally, to get from the airport into the city was $20, half the price of everything else. Driving around town, it would be $1.50.
And actually,
So
funny that you mentioned that because I actually recently had an interview with someone who had talked about Uber, and the safety factors that are actually involved with that, I think, are actually even better than a taxi service because when
100%.
you're using an Uber app, you're like, okay, I'm going to be this person's going to know exactly where I'm going to.
Exactly.
Um, Whether or not they can speak the language is not necessarily relevant unless, I mean, because
Absolutely.
you know who's picking you up, you see their face in most cases,
Right.
you see their license plate information,
Right.
and heaven forbid something actually does happen to you, there's a record of that Uber driver or something that would happen. I mean,
Exactly.
you're protected in many ways that way.
Exactly. And I think far more than you are in a taxi.
Yeah.
We never had any problems with Uber. People could find us. And that's the other thing. I mean, I speak some Spanish, so it was easier. But if you go there and you don't speak any Spanish and you use Uber, you don't have to communicate with the person to explain where you're trying to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes it easier.
Totally.
And there's no cash that you're dealing with either.
Exactly, it's a cashless complete, and you're safe through that entire process. And heaven forbid they did have nefarious ideas. They know you don't carry cash on you, or they know that this is already being paid for in another method. So chances are of a robbery situation would be very, very nominal at that point.
And then there's also a button on the Uber app that works even in Argentina that's alerts if there's a problem. So
Yeah. Perfect. And then finally, on the post-vacation piece, any additional value adds, cost savings, best practices, anything that you want to share with the students?
you know, people are sometimes a little cautious because it's expensive to get there. But if they realize that's your biggest expense is your airline ticket getting there, once you're there, it's really inexpensive. So it shouldn't be something that people look at and say, oh, that's going to be an expensive trip, I'm going to have to save for that. It's no more expensive. In fact, it's cheaper than going to Europe, even though the ticket might sound more expensive. Your costs while you're there are just negligible. I mean, our Airbnb in Buenos Aires was $20 a night
On a 14th floor.
on a skyscraper with a gorgeous view. We had the whole place to ourselves. There was a bottle of wine when we were waiting, when we arrived, and some cheese, and yeah.
Oh, that's spectacular. And sometimes people, I think, need to understand that when you go, you could pay a little to go to a country that's far away, and the people make you feel at home. I had a very similar experience when I went to Bangkok, where I went to a 5-star resort. It cost me pennies once I got there, and when I went there, the concierge had like sweet tea waiting for me in the room, had cold towels waiting for me in the room because it's very humid over there, and it was just one of those things where you just felt so pampered, and they are so happy to have you there and using your money in order to help support the economy. It's a really good it's a good investment on your part culturally, and it's a great investment because they feel that their society is being well represented as part of that process.
Absolutely. I could tell you, I mean, this happened to me when I was in Vietnam last year, and Cambodia next week. A massage a day will make me happy. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm down with that. So,
So
now, if people wanted to see more of your pictures, the best way for them to contact you would be at your website. Is that correct?
yeah, they can see more photographs right on the website. They can look under people, they can look under places, and they'll see, lots of different places that I've traveled. If they have any questions, they can also contact me. There's a contact page on my website. They can see my stuff through Instagram, Facebook as well. Lots of different ways.
And just for my people who are on the podcast, I'm going to spell this out. It's www.Frederico, spelled Frederico, photography, all one word, photography.com. So that's FredericoPhotography.com. Okay?
Perfect.
Again, Morissa, thank you again for sharing this. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Cambodia when you get back, but this has been just a delightful interview. Again, I appreciate it so very much. And should any of my students have any questions or concerns about anything, you can always either send them directly to Morissa if it's a question about Argentina or Uruguay, or if you have a generalized question, you can send it to me over at scott@theprofessortravel.com. As always, hit the bell if you want to be reminded about new videos that come out. You're welcome to like and subscribe. If you're on a podcast, please give it a rating. We absolutely want to know feedback, positive or negative, anything that you are experiencing through this process. But as always, make every day a wonderful travel adventure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.